Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, I'm going to present to you a case of KP, a 12-year-old, Mganda by tribe, Christian from Mukono. The informant was initially a good Samaritan from Beila, but the father came in later on to give us the remainder of the history. The patient is a PED ISS diagnosed in February 2016 on ABC, PTC, and efavirenz, and Septrin with poor weight gain since initiation of ART, and also completed anti-TBs in August 2017. So this patient presented with diarrhea for 3 weeks, fever for 1 week, and difficulty in breathing for 2 weeks. The diarrhea was several episodes. It was watery with occasional blood stains, was worse on feeds, but there was no history of vomiting. There was history of abdominal discomfort with rambling. And this patient says that whenever she eats, she would have the discomfort and then the diarrhea. And it was not specifically any type of food, anything she eats. There was fever that was present all the time, no chills, no rigors. There was no history of night sweats, no long bone tenderness. Difficulty in breathing was associated with cough that was productive in nature, copious, non-blood stained, no history of chest pain, no drenching night sweat, but there was history of progressive weight loss. On review of system, there was no history of awareness of heartbeat, there was no palpitations, no easy fatigability on activity, there was no change in urine habits, no history of headache, convulsions, or loss of consciousness. On past medical history, this was her third admission. First admission was in 2006. Second and third admissions were in 2016. Father could not really tell why the child was admitted in 2006, but in 2016, the father told us it was the same complaint, diarrhea and loss of weight, and was admitted at the malnutrition unit in 2016. There is no history of surgery. Past medical history, this child lives with the father. The mother passed on in 2007 when the patient was 2 years. The mother was passed on with HIV related. The father could not tell exactly what killed the mother. The father says, according to them, he cannot say how many children he has. But from that mother, that was the only child. He's a peasant farmer. The child, the girl was a standard 5 dropout, stopped schooling about 2 years ago. On nutrition history, she eats all types of food, but she's very, very choosy. And with the current illness, she had total loss of appetite and would prefer taking fluids than solids. 1 week recall. Now from the child, she said since the diarrhea started, she has just been taking more of milk and fruit juice, and she doesn't want to eat. And that's what also the father said, that she doesn't want to eat. 24-hour recall, she has just taken porridge and fruit juice. On examination, she was sick looking, hypothermic, the temperature was 35.1. She was chest sick. She had thin, brown, silky hair. She was moderately pale, no palpable lymph nodes, had dry mucous membranes with edema grade 1, had no oral thrush, had widespread nodular lesions on the skin with hyper and hypopigmented lesions. SpO2 at admission was 88% on oxygen. Anthropometry, the weight was 14, the height was 140 centimeters, the BMI calculated was 7.4, which is severe underweight. Turner staging was prepubertal, had only elevation of the papilla, did not have any pubic hair. On cardiovascular system, the extremities were cold to around the mid forearm, had weak thready pulses. Cup refill was more than 3 seconds. On respiratory system, was in respiratory distress with intercostal and subcostal recession, had labored breathing with a rate of 32 breaths per minute, had good air entry with bronchiovesicular breath sounds. Per abdomen, it was soft, moderately distended, no palpable organs or masses, no tenderness, no shifting dullness. On CNS, was lethargic, but the neck was soft, Cunning's was negative, there was no focal neurological deficit. On musculoskeletal system, was obviously wasted with pleuritic papillary eruptions, had verruca planus on the forehead, but did not have any long bone tenderness. Our impression at admission was a PDIasis with some non-edematous, that is acute, severe acute malnutrition, with edema, and was in shock. We also had an impression of chronic watery diarrhea with lactose intolerance. We had metabolic acidosis secondary to electrolyte imbalance. We had molluscum contagiosum and varus planus, and also had secondary developmental delay. So at admission, we resuscitated the patient with IV fluids, regas lactate in 5% dextrose. And to manage our shock, we gave this child 10% dextrose. We covered the child. We asked the bailer lady to get us more blankets so that we can keep the child warm. We gave this girl sodium bicarbonate at 14 milliequivalent BD for a day. We continue with our antibiotics. And since this examination was when the patient came to malnutrition, I did not write the examination when the patient was in acute. I wrote the examination when we saw the patient on day 1 at the malnutrition unit. So we also had the history of the diarrhea had been started on F75 from the acute. So when we got through, we asked the caretaker, who was the lady from Baylor, about the stool. She told us it was worse when the child was taking F75. So we thought it's lactose intolerance. So we stopped our F75 and started this girl on isomil. We got the isomil from Baylor. We also started the girl on zinc at 20 milligrams OD for 10 days. On that day, we also did our labs. We ordered for CBC, RFTs, LFTs, extended electrolytes. We ordered for viral loads, stool analysis for microscopy, pH and reducing sugars with ova and cysts. We also did sputum for gene expert and a chest X-ray. So follow-up subsequently while the girl was still in the ward. On the second day, the child was still passing watery stools, but the frequency had reduced, and now the child was able to sit by herself on the bed, and the respiratory distress had reduced, was able to talk. So on examination on the second day, after being admitted to the malnutrition unit, was not in distress. SpO2 at that time was 92% of oxygen, still had dry mucous membrane, but the extremities were warm and the capillary fill was less than 3 seconds, and the edema had actually resolved because on that day the weight was 3.6. Our labs, we got the labs, some of the lab results. Our CBC had leukocytosis of 19, predominantly with the neutrophils of 16. Our HB was 6.9. Our platelets were 904. Our LFTs were unremarkable. The electrolytes, sodium was 145, potassium was 3.99, creatinine was 149, and the urea was 9.53. We also followed up. We had ordered for a viral load, and apparently they had done a viral load from Baylor like 2 weeks before, and it was undetectable. So our plan on that day was to continue with our isomil, continue with our antibiotics. We were to do plan A of rehydration, and we also to do psychosocial counseling and support for this girl. On day 4 in MNU, was still passing loose motions, but they had reduced to 2, and they were, if you've come to the malnutrition unit, we normally have a chart. So we asked her to identify the consistency, and it was now at 3, but it was still loose motion, 2 episodes. So had occasional cough that was copious in amounts, but on examination was much better, and she could now walk around. So at that time, the saturation was 95% of oxygen, was now well but not happy. She looked sad. The temperature was 36.8 and still had moderate pallor. The edema had resolved. I'll show you the weight chart. Oh, sorry, you cannot. There's a weight chart of the way the edema was coming down, the weight. Okay, we got our stool analysis results. The pH was 6. Reducing sugars was nil. We did a modified ZN that showed no cryptosporidium, oocytes that were seen. Microscopy, it showed yeast cells of 3 pluses and pus cells of 1 plus. No oval cyst was seen or tropocytes seen. Our culture, there was no salmonella or Shigella culture. So our plan on that day was to continue isomil, to do adherence counseling to try and trace the father, and psychosocial support, and to transfer this child to P2. Was in P1, then moved to P2. Day 6, motions have reduced, passing 1, eating well, did an acceptance test, she passed, she was on RUTF, was stable, temperature was 36.8, seated, well hydrated, and was doing well. We did a CBC on that day, a follow-up CBC. The WBCs were now at 8.9, within normal. The HB was 5.7. So our plan was to continue with our isomil and continue with our management. Now, while still in the ward, the father came. So when the father came, initially the father had abandoned the girl in the ward. So when the father came on a weekend, to him, he was like, we are not doing anything. So he decided to come with chicken, milk. It was like we are starving the girl by giving the girl just powder milk. And he told us the girl is not a baby. So he came with milk and chicken and gave the girl. And actually tortured the guardian who was staying with the girl. And she had to run away for some time. But now we've gone back to our initial state, still having, like, passing so much stool that is watery. If you can remember you can say it's on the first one, not even second or third where we had reached. So that's our state at this moment. So yesterday we were doing counseling, we were counseling the father. And yes, so the patient, he wanted to take the child away. So we were counseling her. And we asked the bailiff team to help us. So that's the state we are at this time.